After winning Game 3 with the black pieces, Magnus Carlsen, the reigning world champion, took control of the 2016 World Chess Championship match. He moved into Game 4 of the tiebreaks with the white pieces, putting Sergey Karjakin on tilt. And when you go on tilt, as they say, you play the Sicilian. And that's exactly what Sergey Karjakin did. It explains why I play the Sicilian every time I play the black pieces, because I live my life on tilt. Now, after d4 and the open Sicilian is reached, we knew we were in for a sharp game where either Sergey Karjakin was going to win and even the score, or likely go down in flames trying. And after f3, a tricky little move order, perhaps avoiding any mainline ideas Sergey Karjakin might have had up his sleeve. He really forced Sergey to mix it up early, and Sergey jumped in with his eyes closed and, skinny dipped on the way down, took off everything and said, here we go. After e5, really the main line we can get here, one of the more strategical ways to punish e5 is with the move bishop to b5 check. One of the principled ideas to the Sicilian is that normally black should not try for a move like e5 until the b5 square has been guarded. To give you an example of that, in the main line Najdorf, one of the things that really defines the position after knight to c3 is that black must play a6 before expanding into the aggressive variations of the e5 Najdorf. Again, after bishop e3, e5's a move. After f3, which would be very similar to the game, e5's a move. And in all of these positions, white is forced to release, to move the pony out of his central post. And black then gets compensation for the potentially weak d6 pawn, the weak d5 square, because black is gaining a little bit of the initiative in terms of development. And this all works because white doesn't have the move bishop to b5 check. As an example, after knight to c3, if black is to play e5 immediately, this move comes in. Black is immediately being set to deal with the light squares, and without the light square bishop, these knights are going to dominate d5 and f5 from now until kingdom come, and black is going to be positionally worse. Now, why didn't Carlsen play bishop to b5 then in this game after f3, e5? Well, the first answer is it's not as simple in these variations. Because white has chosen to play f3 rather than the more natural developing move knight to c3, bishop to b5 check can actually be met by bishop d7 here. And in some of these positions after the trade, white has to deal with the fact that black can now get d5 immediately. d5 will now equalize in the center, thus eliminating all of black's positional problems of the d6 pawn, the d5 square. And again, it's something that is normally not possible if you simply change out f3 for the knight being on c3, then you see that a move like d5 is just neither here nor there, because white will just capture the pawn and win the game on the spot. So this is a little bit of a basic description of the first stage of the game, but as you know, I like to establish an every move explained kind of approach in my videos, so that as we get to the complex stuff, you really do feel like you have a good grasp of what's going on. So, in summary, why is black able to break this normal positional dogma in a Sicilian, which is that you cannot play e5 before you stop bishop b5 check? He can do so because Carlsen first varied with a sideline with the move f3, and there is no knight on c3 preventing the d5 positional strike that equalizes. So there you go. And that means that after e5, it's time for Carlsen to just retreat, which he was okay with, because after bishop to e7, he sees the opportunity of this move order to go for yet another structure that, if it's not just a guaranteed draw, it is a guaranteed very difficult time for your opponent. And that, of course, is the Maroczy bind structure. As we all know, the Maroczy bind is c4 and e4 versus either the pawns on e7 and this bishop fianchetto is like a dragon Maroczy. Sometimes the pawn is on e6, and then we have like a hedgehog Maroczy where black will play for b6 and bishop e7. Those positions can occur in Queen's Indians, in different one knight f3 ready systems. So there are different ways for black to play them against the Maroczy, and it's not to say that any of those scenarios black is just losing, but it is always a very tough and slow game for black. It takes a very long time, and it takes a lot of very accurate, disciplined play to be able to play the black side against a Maroczy when your opponent just has more space. They have 2 pawns in the center that you do not. They have complete control over this certain color complex, like we saw Carlsen do in the game 3, where he got a complete control over the dark square complex and eventually won that game as black. Here it's very difficult, and if black cannot organize the strikes of either b5 to undermine this, d5 to undermine it, or get a lot of pressure against the c4 pawn with moves like bishop e6, knight c6 to a5, the rook comes to c8, black needs a lot of time to really fight for equality in these Maroczy bind centers. And so the tone is really being set early in this game by Magnus Carlsen that he is going to make black's life difficult if he ever expects to mix it up, because black has to win this game in order to tie it. If Magnus even gets a draw, he retains his title as the world chess champion. So a5 is played. Karjakin is just all in at this point. He's going to play the aggressive variations of the black side of the Maroczy. One of the main ideas behind this early a-pawn advance is what you see here. There are many positions in the Maroczy where this queen lands on a5, and you put a rook on c8 after the bishop comes to e6, and you look for pressure. But whenever the pawn is on a7, you have tactical issues. Sometimes it's that the queen is undefended because the rook isn't guarding her, and so once the white queen comes to d2, there's discovered attacks. Sometimes it's just that even if you get the pressure on the c-file, you don't have anywhere to go beyond that because, again, you don't have enough space to compete with white on the queen side. The disadvantage for Karjakin, even though he just gained those 2 advantages I described, the queen is defended, he has more space, is that he just wasted 2 moves with the pawn rather than moves that get the other pieces developed. And so Carlsen just takes a very simple, I'm going to consolidate, put every piece on their most natural square, and here comes the rook to b1, which is exactly the way you play a textbook Maroczy. We have threats of b4, and even if you en passant, then we'll just renew the threat of b4, and we are going to slowly start to push your pieces back from the first player's perspective in this type of Maroczy. And I really don't know how else to describe it besides that's exactly what happened here. This is the kind of position that black is normally... If black is in a game where a draw is okay, which, by the way, most of the time when these top grandmasters play is exactly the kind of game that black is in, right? Let's be honest, hashtag Anish Giri. Just kidding, Giri. We all know everyone loves to draw. No, but I mean, if black is normally in a position where equality is not the end of the world and he can just sit tight, one of the advantages to this structure for black is that for all of its lack of space, for all the control white has that I described, black has no long-term positional weaknesses, and so you can play the black side of these positions if you have a very patient mindset, and in some cases you're willing for the half-point result. But for this structure to be reached in a must-win situation for Sergey Karjakin, the challenger, you knew the Russian was in for a big-time struggle in this game. And Carlsen just comes forward naturally, doesn't even get over-aggressive with b4. He allows some trades to be made, or offers trades, which if black doesn't do it, then you can guess where this knight is going. That's right, going to b4, where it's going to help its buddy gain even more control over d5. In the next several moves, we see the writing kind of starts to fall on the wall. Bishop to c6, the rook comes to d1. h5 is played, kind of a desperate attempt to create counterplay on the king side where you really don't have a lot of business attacking. Carlsen just continues to sit tight. This is a very strong and common maneuver if you're looking for patterns. What patterns can we take from games and apply to our own games? If you are not asking yourself that, and every time you are reviewing a top grandmaster game, you are doing yourself a disservice. What patterns from this game can I take and apply to my own games, whether it's an opening pattern, the best moves in the openings being revealed to me by the strong players, a pawn structure idea, or a very common remaneuvering of the pieces. This is exactly something that white loves to get as a battery facing the queen side in these Maroczy binds, because once that bishop comes to b6, it just puts black even more on his toes. And after knight to d7 to guard bishop b6, that just means the d5 square is going to be more available here any moment. And, okay, so first white deals with the threats on the a-file, which putting a knight on d5 was also possible in a lot of those positions. But Carlsen is still playing the, I'm going to make sure you really don't have anywhere else to go, right? I'm going to send you back to the van down by the river where there is no place else to go. Play a little tickle here. Eventually, I'm going to execute something on that d5 square. b6 is played, not a bad move because it strengthens the c5 square, but also creates a pawn target. So black is in a little bit of a bind there. Here comes the d-file being doubled. And now Carlsen really just shows that he was in control of this game when he just takes h4. He's not going to sit tight forever if the position is just going to be held by black and white's going to have all the options here and lots of space. He figures he might as well go grab a pawn too. Trading f4 is not a bad idea because that opens up a new square, which is the d4 square at some point to be useful. And once he follows the elimination of this knight with one bishop, he figures there's no reason to hold on to the bishop pair in general. Makes another trade just so he can come back to executing tactics against this d5 square. As we said, it was going to happen, although in the move order that was played, it didn't need to happen because Carlsen was able to execute immediate tactics. With the move knights at b5, he's either just going to win the d6 pawn outright, or he's going to give Karjakin the opportunity to go for something even more crazy, which is to sacrifice the exchange. Karjakin is on tilt here. Again, a lot of moves here are doing good for white, but if he just sits on the position, Carlsen would have the pleasant choice of just sitting on it himself, moves like just continuing to dominate the light squares and leave black with not a lot of choices, or consider just going and gobbling up the d6 pawn because after that falls, likely the b6 pawn falls too. Any of those would have been playable. But Karjakin decided, well, might as well risk it if I'm ever going to taste that biscuit or at least smell it in the oven from Carlsen's house. And I'm going to go sack the exchange. That's what he did here, but the rest, as they say, was a matter of technique. You can't really blame the Russian for getting in this completely lost position, given the match scenario he was facing. But still, the Sicilian just didn't quite get the kind of Sicilian you want. It didn't get a lot of tension. To be honest, if I was to provide one last piece of sort of opening preparation feedback for Karjakin, I'm not really the kind of player who can give him criticism. I would say that I don't think the e5 approach is, even against e6, it's not the most flexible way to play a position where you can maybe try to get some tactics later on. Usually, the mainline Najdorf with the e6 variations, things that allow for the position to change and take a different nature and under a lot of different circumstances. That would have been my choice if I was in a must-win scenario where I have to play for something that's dynamic and tricky. I don't feel like allowing this closed structure, the very fixed Maroczy bind position where white's going to own the light squares, is really ever the ideal way to play a must-win situation as black. But is there ever really an ideal way to play a must-win situation as black against the most accurate chess player of all time in Magnus Carlsen? Probably not. So again, that's why I said it's feedback, not criticism. But here we go. The exchange is won, and after that falls, white continues to own the light squares, and black just runs out of time. We get more opportunities for black created if he can get the queen in here and maybe get the rook involved because the white king is a little open. The problem is in order to get into a scenario like that, you're probably risking even more than you're going after. And after rook a2 check, queen f2, along with my foreshadowing comment that you're probably risking more than you're going after, I'm going to give you a chance to find what may have been one of the sexiest ways to ever end a World Chess Championship in history, if you ask me. Of course, those of you who are just looking at the engine above me have already seen it, but I'm not going to go with bishop f8. I'm going to go with what Karjakin did and show you the nicest move to finish the game that Carlsen played, which was queen to h6, and the challenger immediately resigned. If king takes h6, we have Czekalina La Shlamba. And if g takes h6, we sing La 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 Bamba. And just like that, the World Chess Championship was won, which puts us in a position to do a quick recap of what happened in the tiebreak. We saw both of the first two games drawn. Probably game two was already a sign of things to come. But psychologically, despite facing the black pieces, Magnus Carlsen was not going to let that deter him from being aggressive. He won what I believe was the game of the match. That's the third game video. If you haven't watched my analysis to game three and the epic attack that he launched in a very King's Indian style, you have to go back and watch that video of game three. So probably that was really the defining moment of the match, him winning that game as black. Game four was the game you just saw here. Not really the ideal scenario for the challenger to have a must-win game as black, but hey, that's what she wrote. That's the storyline, and with it we have a world champion once again. Magnus Carlsen defends his title for the third time against the second different opponent. The first two matches coming against Vichy Anand, as we know. And we say adieu. We wish you well. We thank you for following all of our coverage on chess.com. We give a congratulations to all of the chess websites and companies that invested so much time and resources into covering this match. From the official broadcast team, the wonderful job that Judah Polgar did, the organizational efforts by Aegon and FIDE. I think they impressed some people with the way that it came together, despite the horrible bugs on their board. So I believe they deserve a congratulations. Chess24 deserves a huge congratulations. Their website had so many viewers during the live show that it crashed. Just phenomenal work by everybody providing commentary over at Chess24. Just top-notch stuff. Everybody else, I mean, ChessBase had coverage, ChessBomb. Every website that puts in so much time and effort to put in resources to covering these sort of flagship events for the chess community, it just deserves a huge thumbs up. And so I congratulate all of them. I congratulate Magnus Carlsen. And I hope that everybody enjoyed chess.com's coverage. No live coverage, but providing as many video breakdowns, educational tips, and highlights, which is really our kind of format, the bread and butter, and the way we like to deliver content anyway. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had fun. Please subscribe to our channel, share these videos, and look for more from us coming up in the very near future as chess.com rolls out even more of its own events and its own big-time championships. So peace out, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and had fun covering the 2016 World Chess Championship.